Okay, I'm here with Lee Stranahan, one of the only interviews we've done in my room, so this is going to be a nice, quiet, no background noise interview. So, Lee, you're here at CPAC 2018. What have you seen? What do you like?
I actually came over to have lunch with James O'Keefe. So that was my thing. I've been a little under the weather lately, and so this is the first day I've been here. But you know, I've been at CPAC for most of the last 7 CPACs since Andrew Breitbart brought me here in 2011.
Now, I've noticed a big difference in the questions I've been asking people at CPAC. Last year I asked people about Trump and so forth, and you had a really mixed reception. The people here at CPAC this year, they seem to really have embraced him. Is this something that you've seen in your reporting, or is this basically just the Never Trumps didn't show?
Well, my guess would be that part of what's going on is people have seen the, you know, it's funny, I was watching Andrew Breitbart's speech this morning from 2012, and one of the things he says in that speech is, he says, I don't care who the candidate is. He says, we got to get behind it, it's America or Occupy. So the reason I mention that is because it occurs to me that last year's CPAC, Trump had just gotten in. Now, everybody here on the show floor has seen the media attacks against Trump. And it is at an unprecedented level of dishonesty. In other words, there wasn't even a honeymoon period. It's just attack, attack, attack in the most dishonest way possible. So I think that he's even warmed the hearts of some of the people who were never Trumpers to be going like, boy, it's what Andrew said. Pick a path. It's the Republican candidate on one side and the people out to destroy us on the other side. And I think that's my guess is what's going on. It could be I'm just affected by things, but I haven't watched that with Andrew. But it really struck me that and it struck me that guys like Ben Shapiro, who were never Trump, for instance, who spoke this year, you know, Ben's position in the election, he was a never Trumper, which Andrew never would have gone, which whatever, Ben's his own guy. But I think a lot of people who were never Trumpers who were speaking this year, Dana Lash, Ben Shapiro, they had other things to talk about. This NRA thing, huge story right now. So obviously Dana's going to come on to talk about that. So I think there are also other people interested in other issues. But I think people realize that that the attacks on Trump are so big and so dishonest that it's not really just about Trump. It's about something wider.
Now, I've done a couple of interviews off-site, one on camera, one off, of average people as I've gone places to like Vuck Pinball or one of the diners in Alexandria. And I found that while the media doesn't seem to get when Trump is talking, or as if they just can't stand the way he talks, and then one of the main criticisms I've had from people who I've asked about what do they think of Trump is presentation, presentation, presentation. The average people seem to understand him and are not shocked and not bothered by the way he presents himself.
Trump comes across, I've heard people on the left say this, people who grew up in New York especially, or New England even, Democrats, they say he sounds like my grandfather. They say, this is my grandfather used to complain about politics, and that's the way they talk. In other words, people are very sick of politicians. Trump winning the primary, he was not the most polished guy on stage ever. Ever. He was not that guy. There are people who know how to talk like a politician. Rubio, Cruz, I forget whether you like their policies or not. They're polished. Trump never came off that way, but it's a way that speaks directly to people, I think. So I'm not surprised by that at all. When I've been covering the White House press conferences in the past year, and boy, the people in that room hate his guts. And you can tell when you watch the press conferences, but you can tell more when you're in there. When you're in there and you hear him talk before the press conference, after the press conference, they hate him. And so they're the ones presenting the news, but the media aren't the people. And by the way, that's the other thing. I'll just mention this. I never hear people in the White House press briefing room care about the people. They always, all they care about is the media. Literally, they're trying to impress the other people in the room. So
I saw something like that. I actually have questioned Trump twice at press conferences, although it was during the campaign. I haven't gotten into the being able to get near him since president. And when I questioned him in Worcester, before I was in the press room, I was in the front, 4 media guys were behind me, and they were literally 4 different competing organizations choreographing how they were going to ask their questions in order to nail him. I thought that, and I couldn't believe the idea. And my questions, I've questioned him twice. All my questions have been designed to drive traffic to my site because to complement coverage I was doing on the event. And I mean, I literally was complimented by him twice on the questions. On my business card is a quote from Donald Trump saying a nice thing about me.
Right.
Because of that. And is the media are they going to recognize this, or is it just
no, they'll never recognize it. I'll give you 2 stories. One, I was sitting outside the White House press briefing room. There's a little wall, so I was sitting there writing something up. And there's another reporter sitting next to me. And this was after the press conference, one of the other reporters came up, and I just happened to be sitting there. And he said, "Hey, great job picking up my question." Because the one reporter had asked another variant of the same question the other reporter had. They do this all the time. Watch press conferences. And the other reporter said, "Yeah, you bet." They said, "We really got to help each other carry the ball down the field." This is literally what they said to each other. That literally, like, hey, we have to help. So it wasn't coordinated beforehand. They just know to do it. Here's the second one. And I'm going to get a little salty here with the language, but because this is what happened. I was at one of the early Trump press conferences. I think it was, not press conferences, rallies, in Phoenix. It was the first big first big Trump rally in Phoenix, Arizona. And there's a media pen, okay? And I sat in the media pen. And I wasn't wearing a Breitbart. At the time I was with Breitbart, but I didn't have a Breitbart badge on. Just media. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, look at our badges. Media, it'll say thetechguyblog.com, but they don't know what that means.
Right. So this was just media. So the guy thought I was another media guy, right? Like a normal media guy. So we're sitting at the rally, and all the people are coming in. They're wearing American flags and everything else. And the guy just looks at me and says, "Look at these fucking people." Literally, he's just like, "Look at these fucking people." He's like, "I hate these fucking people." And what he expected, why did he say that to me? He didn't know me. He said that to me, right? Because he expected I would go, "Yeah." Because that's what everybody else in the media pen would have done. Does that make sense?
I was back in 2012, I was covering Mitt Romney when he was announcing Paul Ryan at St. Anselm College. And they had just got broken for lunch. They were having lunch with the abbot. And there was a man with a young kid there, and they asked about where Romney was, and they wanted because the son wanted to meet him, and they said, "Well, they're over there having lunch," and they walked away. And the media there, I'm sitting down. The media there were making fun of that guy for wanting to meet Mitt Romney. Now, Mitt Romney is the un-Trump,
right?
But the attitude is the same. It's very funny that Mitt Romney 16 months ago was giving speeches about how Trump is unacceptable and is now putting out tweets thanking him for his endorsement.
Yes.
But
see, it goes to what I think, which is this is, and so you ask, do they get it? No, they don't get it, because everybody else who they deal with. See, me seeing that stuff, I'm the anomaly. Does that make sense?
Well, look at myself. I've only started in media in 2010. I mean, that's 9 years ago. I was 45 years old then. So I was a normal person before then.
No, so me too. I didn't start doing journalism until 10 years ago.
And so we started around the same time.
Yeah.
We're both normal people, so we act like normal people. These people have spent their lives in the pen.
And that's why I say this all the time. It's a throwaway line. You'll hear politicians say it, but I mean it. I moved to Washington a year ago. I didn't move here to make friends. And true to my word, I haven't. And a lot of people say that, but it actually means something. The problem is, and by the way, it would be the same issue with Trump. The problem is, if you're a reporter and you're covering politicians, and people in the State Department and people, you depend on them for access. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'm an investigative journalist. That means that I don't count on people for access. That means that I try to look at the story and I'm trying to dig into stuff. Most reporters aren't like that. Most reporters need to make friends because that's where they get their stories from. And so I get it. I understand it. It's been fascinating living here. I understand Washington, having lived here in a way I did not understand it before I lived here. But it tells me why they're never going to change. They're never going to change because they have no incentive to.
Now, I think that based on what I see, from people. Now, remember, I live in Massachusetts. I mean, I work with a young girl, for example, because my second job is, or my first job, depending on how you put it, is in a warehouse, because I depend, like you, on people kicking in. Sometimes they kick in, sometimes they don't. They kicked in this year, so I was able to come here. Hard worker, conservative though a lesbian, conservative by nature.
Right.
Who really thinks that Mike Pence is going to put her away in a concentration camp if he gets a chance. And I wonder sometimes, because they're so insular, because people have become so insular about this.
Yes.
Will people be like that woman in Bethesda I was telling you about and break out of the, oh, this is evil thing? Or will the reality of what's going on actually kick in?
Part of the problem when you talk about people being insular, part of the problem is people are also insular on the right. So, as easy as it would be to blame the woman for thinking that, I would argue that maybe Mike Pence can do a better job of showing up as well to dispel that. Maybe, and this is always Andrew Breitbart's point. You've got to get out of one of the reasons he worked with me when I wasn't on the right at the time was because he didn't want the Pigford story to die in what he called the conservative ghetto. And part of the problem is it's very easy for people to get insular at events and not talk to other people. So a guy like Pence, he's got his views on homosexuality, but it's no way he wants to put that woman, right? But she doesn't necessarily know that, because where's Pence showing up to try to do things? And so I think people take to try to put in the other side. Now, on the other hand, you could see this at the Olympics, where he wanted to meet with the one skater who's gay, I guess, and the skater was like, I'm not going to even meet with him. And everyone on the left was like, yay, don't meet with him. Come on. You know, everyone just needs to cut it out. The dividing people has worked really well for the political establishment. It's worked really well. If they can keep people divided, they can keep them tamped down. And it's the most dangerous thing in the world. So, on one hand, I think it's wacky that people think that stuff about Pence. On the other hand, I think everybody on the right needs to take themselves out of the bubble, too. Because I agree completely. Everyone's isolated right now, and it's a big problem. So,
all right. Is there a particular story you're working on that my listeners and readers should know about?
The story I've been working on for a year broadly is the Russiagate hoax. I was working on it when I was at Breitbart, and now I work for Sputnik, which is Russian-funded radio. But anybody who knows my career knows that I would just, if they told me what to do, I would quit. But one of the reasons I was happy to work at Sputnik is because it puts me right in the middle of this hoax. The scapegoating of Russia is the biggest story right now, and it's beyond Trump. Everyone's seeing the Russiagate Trump thing. The reason it's important, everyone needs to watch out for this, is it's being used to crush people's First Amendment rights. You have never, think about this, Pete. 2 years ago, if somebody had accused you or me of being, you're a Russian bot, they would sound like a crazy person, right? But now, 2 years later, 2018, calling someone a Kremlin dupe or a Russian bot has become a thing. And I think normal people 2 years ago, 2016, 2015 certainly, I'll bet most people's opinions was what mine is and was about Russia. If they ask you what you think about Russia, it's probably like, didn't like them when they were communist. Right now, I don't see the thing. Are they a threat? I don't know. No, I'm not thinking about Russia that much. And now it's become so polarized on Russia that just accusing someone of being a Kremlin bot, a Russian dupe, treasonous, is a way to shut down free speech. And they're doing it to Trump. They're doing it to people like me who happen to work for Sputnik, but they're doing it to everybody, everybody. And I think it's the biggest story out there. And people need to be very careful because the people doing it are trying to gin up a second Cold War. Here's what's going on. Let's get it real simple. The first Cold War, I at least understand in the sense of it was about ideology. I don't like communism. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. Because
now they can't criticize. What's the Russian ideology they criticize? There is none.
There's none. The only, like, my thought would be Putin's ex-KGB, but he's out for Putin.
So here's what they do. Because they don't have the communist ideology, which I hate commies, but they don't have that anymore. So what they've done is they've done a full Alinsky on Putin. They've isolated, let's not make it about the ideology, let's make it about that guy, right? And is Vladimir Putin the worst? Is he the biggest threat to me as an American, to you?
No, but I don't think he makes top 5.
That's right. And so what's happened is they've replaced communism with Putin. It's a very Alinsky-like tactic. But it's been effective because who wants to defend Putin? You see what I'm saying? No one wants to come up and go, well, no, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't think there's any proof he killed that one journalist or whatever. And then you look into it, you're like, well, there's not. No one's defending it. So they've done it. And what they've done is they managed to trick mostly Democrats. This is stunning. The same people who loved Russia when they were communist. Bernie Sanders honeymooned in Moscow.
During the Cold
War.
That I got to tell you, and I don't mean to interrupt your thought, but this is a bugaboo for me, and it really upsets me.
Yeah.
Because to me, there is no difference between honeymooning in the Soviet Union during the Cold War,
right,
than honeymooning in Berlin in 1938. There's none.
That's right.
Because you have two murderers, and I mean, he embraced these guys when they were mass murderers.
Right.
Now they're just crooks like anybody, crooked politicians like anyone else trying to make a buck. But it's not. It's that we whitewash this with Bernie, but the left has always. The left's always embraced communism because it was
now
easy.
Bernie Sanders is going for this Russiagate thing. It's insane. What they've done is they've managed to co-opt the other side, and it's ultimately, you watch, it's a free speech issue. But also it's about protecting a failed foreign policy. That's part of what it's about. It's protecting a failed foreign policy in places like Syria and Ukraine and places like that. But it's crazy, and so that's what I think the biggest story, because you can't go anywhere without touching this Russiagate story right now.
I mean, I think the Russia stuff is. I mean, I read the indictments when they put out the indictments.
Yeah,
I remember there was the story on the FBI. The story had just come up about the FBI dropping the ball in Florida and the Russia indictments. And I read I literally brought up the indictments and read them and started doing a blog post. And they paid for a megaphone at a rally. Seriously?
Yes.
They paid tens of. I mean. They accused of you spending thousands of dollars a month on social media, not tens of thousands, not hundreds. I mean, it was
not millions.
Tens, thousands? Are you serious? I mean, someone spent thousands on me as a small blogger. That would make a difference. If someone was giving me $2,000 a month, it would make a huge difference for me. But in changing public opinion in election, that would.
But this is a perfect example. Let me just explain how it affects you.
This is a good long interview. I love an interview like I don't do enough good long interviews like this.
Quiet,
I love this.
And I'm talkative. But if you take a look at James O'Keefe's expose on Twitter, what did they find out? Here's how they define Russian bot. Did you see his interview? It's amazing. If somebody's got a flag in their profile, in their Twitter profile, they're probably a Russian bot. If you go to, there's a site, propornot.com. They list a long list of how they determine whether someone's a Russian bot. Do you know what one of the things they list is? If you're in favor of the gold standard. Think about that. This is
Seriously?
it's on their own site. This is how they determine who a Russian bot is. If you're a Ron Paul supporter, you're probably a Russian bot. If James O'Keefe exposed, if you got an American flag, and this is the way these people think. They think that like, well, if somebody's got like, I love God and America, and that's not a real person. This is literally the way they think. And so what they're doing is, this is the same trick the left has been doing for a long time. First off, they play judge, jury, and executioner. So they say, it's okay to punch a Nazi, Nazis are bad. Oh, and by the way, you're a Nazi. By the way, you're a Nazi. Not the actual Nazi, but if you're a Trump supporter, you're a Nazi. So what they've done with this Russia thing is they go, Russia's interfering in the election, we need to shut them down. Facebook, Twitter, we need to shut down. I lost 1,000 followers the other day on Twitter because Twitter did this purge.
I heard about that. Believe it or not, I lost nobody. I don't, but I've never pushed myself on Twitter. I've only got like 4,100 followers, but I've never pushed me.
Well, okay, so I have like 56,000, 86,000, something like that. It's a decent number.
Yeah.
I lost 1,000 followers, but then they started coming back because people are like, what are you doing to me? I'm not a what? But this is the way they think. So this is what they're using to shut down speech, and it's I swear it is the most dangerous thing in the world because what they've done is by making Russia the enemy, this becomes an issue of treason and a threat to the United States. They I forget who it was, but a major person went on TV, and it was Clapper maybe or somebody like that, and they compared the Russian, what they claimed, the Russian Facebook ads. They compared it to Pearl Harbor.
I saw that.
9/11.
That was one of the dumbest things. I mean, I've heard some dumb things. You have to be really dumb to believe that. But if people don't know history, then
they do. And see, here's the thing: if you elevate it to that level, then you can take extreme measures to shut down people's free speech rights. So,
and what's also interesting about this is that it's like by this focus on Russia, it's not only you don't focus on China. China has a very good infrastructure, very good cyber warfare group. I mean, like Vino Computers, when they first moved to IBM and said we're going to make these in China, I said I don't want one, because I know that for myself when we would program, because I started out as a programmer, which is
right.
why I'm the tech guy. We would put back doors and stuff just for fun.
Yes.
You don't think that if China, the communist Chinese, are manufacturing IBM computers, they might not think, hey, let's put a hardware or a software backdoor in it.
Well, I'll tell you the other one. Let's go. We want to compare countries. Saudi Arabia. You remember when remember like 13 Russians got on planes and they knocked down the World Trade Center? Oh no, that was the Saudis. And remember just a couple of years ago when we were going to put out the 28 pages that the Saudis had pulled out, they threatened us because they hold a huge amount of U.S. debt, the Saudis. And by the way, the Saudis, the home of Salafism, Wahhabism, which is where all the terrorisms come from the past few years. I think Saudi Arabia is a much bigger threat, but they're our ally.
Of course, you have the reforms in Saudi Arabia the last year, which have been, I mean, to normal people, this is like, oh, big deal, women can drive a bit, but the guy over there, I don't know if he's just cleaning house to get rid of rivals, or if he's cleaning house to oppress the West, or if he's got something, or what's going on, but it's some big changes there.
Well, there's some changes. It's hard to say, because some of the people have gotten out and they took their money. So I'm one of those people who like, but here's what I don't see. They're still doing beheadings, right? They're still the home of Salafism and Wahhabism, and they're still a major arms buyer for the U.S. And so when I look around the world at the countries that I think are dangerous, Russia's really, they've never been, not since the fall of the Berlin Wall, has Russia been high on my list of threats. So, but there's nobody else right now. There's no, Clapper literally said, he said Russians are almost genetically prone to dishonesty. Did you see that?
No, I haven't heard that.
He said it. It's stunning. And so, but the threat is you don't have to like Russia. But what's happening is they're associating everybody here at CPAC with Russia. Everybody, it's amazing. It's a really dangerous.
Although I must admit, when I saw the bags they're giving out with CPAC with the white and red, I mean, I know looks more like the Polish flag than the Russian flag, but I said to myself, I remember them trying to pass out Russian flags last year, one of the Samantha Bee things. I'm thinking to myself, You know, would you really want to make that bag? You could have used different colors for that bag.
Yeah.
I mean, that was because it plays into the media thing.
But that's why, like I said, that's why I'm actually happy to be working at Sputnik now, because it puts me right in the middle of it. And I tend to walk into fires, so I'm like, and I just know it's not true, and I learn a lot of stuff. I'll give you one quick thing, and because I've been talking too long, I'll give you one quick thing. Paul Manafort. Here's one thing I learned from working for Sputnik, because I talked to my boss. He said, you got to understand, Russia was not happy that Paul Manafort was hired by Yanukovych. I said, why is that? He said, because they were paying Manafort millions of dollars. He said, Russia has political consultants too. Russia said to Yanukovych, why are you hiring this guy? Why don't you hire some Russians to be your political consultants and send some money this way? So that's the kind of inside info that I never would have gotten otherwise. And it makes perfect sense when you hear it. You're like, why would the Russians be thrilled with Manafort? Because they're not, by the way. The Russians aren't thrilled with Manafort. So it's interesting. It's fascinating. But that's, I think, the biggest story. And everyone really needs to watch out for it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the questions I've asked everyone at CPAC now.
Okay.
Okay, Trump year one. Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Or Mets and Mets?
It's mixed. Foreign policy, he's been awful. He was co-opted. The first thing they did was they got rid of Flynn. They brought in McMaster. And his foreign policy is indistinguishable, virtually, from the Obama foreign policy, except Jerusalem. Other than that, he's continued Afghanistan. He's continued. So we've been in Afghanistan 17 years. It's not at all what he ran on. Domestically, he's been not as good as I would have hoped, but about as good as I would have expected. The tax reform thing was a big deal. I think he is going to get the wall through. I think he's been tough on a lot of issues. So, as unhappy as I was not happy when Trump launched missiles into Syria.
Okay, by the way, let me expand on that so you can
Yeah.
throw in it. Best thing, worst thing that Trump's done.
What's that?
Best and worst thing Trump's done. And that fits in with you were talking about the missiles into Syria.
The missiles into Syria was probably, to me, was the low point. He was talked into it over a number of people's objections. And it was bad. And even General Mattis came out recently and said there was no proof for that gas attack. He came out and then he got shut up quickly. But there wasn't any proof. Best thing, I would argue, is his tweeting. It's the best thing.
You are the let me tell. I got to interrupt you for a second. I love Trump's tweeting, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I have interviewed you. I cannot tell you. Well, you know how I do things.
Yeah.
The most common. If I sold a book for every time someone said the thing they hate the most about Trump is his presentation, his tweeting, I would have no books to take home.
Yes.
So the best thing is Trump is his tweeting, and why is that the case?
Because it indicates to me that he's still his own person. His tweets are you know, when someone gets kidnapped, they have that proof of life thing. His tweets are proof of life. His tweets to me are proof that the guy I wanted elected and helped get elected is still in there somewhere. So if you watch the speech he made when he announced he was going to continue Afghanistan, watch this speech. I'm not making this up. He was talking like this. Our great American heroes. He's like asleep. But then when he gets up in front of a podium here at CPAC, he's still that guy. And I'm like, okay, that's the part he's been talked into by guys like McMaster. But then I see that the guy's still in there. And that's why I'm actually hopeful that...
They've been talks that McMaster will be out soon.
Yeah, I know, and I'm hopeful. But it depends who he's replaced with. The problem is Trump doesn't know how co-opted he's been.